If you have some active duty military time and you're thinking about buying back this time to apply towards your FERS retirement, make sure you watch this video. Hi, I'm Christian with Plan Your Federal Retirement. And today I want to talk about the question we get asked a lot, which is about buying back military time. We've got lots of videos and articles and content covering this, but I had this question come up quite a bit recently, so I thought I'd make another video to discuss it. Really, the biggest things that we're seeing when you have some time in the military and then not enough to get a military retirement, and then thinking about your FERS career and working for the federal government, is it does make a lot of sense to buy back that time because you're not forfeiting any pension by doing so. It does have a cost, and I want to talk about what that cost is to actually buy back that military time. But as we go through the math, it's almost like 10 out of 10 times, it just makes a lot of sense where that break-even point is so soon where it just makes a ton of sense to do this. And that's what I wanted to talk about is it's going to increase what your pension calculation will be under FERS, but it also affects your eligibility for retirement. And both of those things could be in your favor. So let's just use a quick example. Let's say that, Bob, our favorite client, he is 60 years young. And let's say he works for the federal government. He's been working for the federal government. And right now his high three is $100,000. And again, Bob is age 60. And let's say he's got 15 years of credible service under FERS. So the normal retirement rules would be retiring with your MRA with at least 30 years of service, age 60 with at least 20 years of service, or age 62 with at least 5 years of service. So in this example, Bob would have to wait 2 more years to retire because he doesn't quite meet these eligibility rules that I mentioned above, unless he was special provisions or did an MRA plus 10 postponed retirement. But let's say he just wants to go out and have a normal retirement. Well, he can't retire until 62 without having it affect his pension. But instead, we know Bob also has some military time. Let's say he has 6 years of military time. So if he were to retire today, again, let's kind of back out of the eligibility rules for just a second, but let's just do a quick pension calculation. You would take the $100,000 high three multiplied by the 15 years multiplied by 1%. So just simple, easy math. That's about $15,000 a year. Divide that by 12. It would be $1,250 that his pension would be. He'd actually have to postpone that till 62. But kind of putting that aside, that'd be $1,250 that he would have based on his eligibility today. Okay, well, let's look at his military time. He's got 6 years of military time. And let's say his base pay when he was working many years ago in the military on average was $40,000. That was his base pay. The formula for buying back this time is you take your base pay multiplied by the years that you're buying back, multiplied by 3%. So we take the 40,000 times 6 years, so 240,000. 240,000 times 3%, that equals $7,200 would be the deposit that he would have to pay back in order to actually buy this time back. So it kind of seems like a lot of money, but what impact does this have? Well, if we go back to our original example, instead of him having 15 years, if he buys back those extra 6 years, it goes from 15 to 21 years. And instead of $15,000 a year, it would be the same formula, 21 years times 100,000. So that would be $21,000 a year. Or if we divide that by 12, it'd actually be $1,750. So an extra $6,000 a year or an extra $500 a month in this example for Bob to buy back his 6 years of military time. So very soon, within a year and a half, right, this buyback would make a lot of sense for him because he would actually be making more if he just lived another year and a half in retirement for buying back this time. There is a penalty if you if you don't buy it back within the first 3 years of working for the federal government. So if he worked in the 90s in the military, has 6 years of time in the 90s in the military, and there's been 2 decades or more of time where he then worked in FERS and didn't buy it back, and he decides to buy it back now, there is essentially an interest payment that would be owed. You have a grace period for the first 3 years, and then after that, interest starts to accrue on this payment. So let's say, instead of it being $7,200 with interest, he decides to buy it back, 25 years later. Let's just say it was, going to cost him $18,000 instead of the $7,200 because of interest. That's a lot more money, right? So good rule of thumb, if you had prior military experience and time active duty, and you didn't retire with a military pension, and you do go to work for the federal government, good idea to probably buy it back as soon as possible. But if you did decide to wait, it cost you more. But as we talked about before, the difference in the 6 years of bought back time, the delta there was $6,000 a year. So 18,000, 6,000 was the difference. That's only going to be 3 years until Bob would have essentially made back his money. It'd be a 3-year break-even point. So in that case, it probably still makes a ton of sense to still buy back that time, even with that interest payment there. But the other point that I wanted to bring up was the eligibility side as well. So in the original example, Bob was age 60 and he only had 15 years of service. Well, buying back this extra 6 years of military time does impact and affect his eligibility for retirement. So in this case, he'd be 60 with 21 years of service, and that meets the eligibility rules under a normal retirement. He could retire right away. So hopefully this video is helpful. Again, if you don't or haven't bought back your military time, seriously consider it. Just going through the math, it always makes a lot of sense to do it, and it affects the eligibility in a positive way too. If you do have a military pension as well, so you had your 20 years and now you have a military pension, maybe it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of times it doesn't make sense because then you have to forfeit what your military pension would be in order to buy back this time. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense. Some very small chance it does, but for the most part it doesn't if you have that military pension already because you have to forfeit it. So just the other consideration there. The other thing we've talked about too, if you have reserve time, if you have a reserve component to your military, or if you were, guard, you can actually kind of double dip this time. You could buy back the time while still getting a reserve pension for most of the time, but then buying back those years to apply towards your FERS career and double dip those years, which is pretty cool too. So if you have reserve or guard time, maybe look into that as well, because I can even make a better case for doing this. So hopefully this video was helpful. Just a short video today. If you have questions about this, let us know in the comments below. And until next time, happy planning.